84 people whose nationality we don't even know. We know nothing about them except that they are dead. They were killed in their boats by the United States military, ordered to do so by Trump and Hegseth. There was no evidence that was presented to these people. They had no lawyer. There was no trial. They had no jury. They had no judge. The president and the secretary of war that he appoints were the judge, the jury, the lawyer, and the executioner, all in one, all in a moment's decision. That's not legal, friends. Some time ago, there was a capture of a leading Latin American politician, the president of a country, his name Juan Orlando Hernández. I'm not going to mention the country because it doesn't really matter. He was arrested for being, together with his brother, in the business of bringing millions and millions of dollars worth of the drug, the illegal drug cocaine, into the United States, where cocaine is a major drug, as I'm assured all of you already know. As a person arrested for a crime, charged with it, he was able, partly because he's wealthy and the head of a country, he was able to hire first-rate lawyers, expensive ones. He was entitled here in the United States to trial by a jury. He was given a chance to cross-examine any witnesses or evidence brought against him. In short, we gave him as a nation the right to legal counsel, the right to be found innocent or guilty in a court of law following the rules. He was found guilty, and in accordance with the law, he was imprisoned, given a prison sentence for some years. Okay, had he been a poor, not well-known person, he would have had to serve more time, most likely. But that's not why I'm talking to you about it, because that kind of injustice happens in the United States every day. And I wouldn't have a program here about it, although I'm not proud if that's the case. No, what happened is that a few weeks after he began serving his time, a few weeks, and he had a sentence of several years for bringing narcotics into the United States, and he was found guilty in a jury with a judge about that. Within a few weeks of beginning his sentence, President Trump pardoned him and freed him, and he is out among us today as I speak. Why am I bringing it up? Because over the last 4 months, the United States, under the direction of President Trump and Secretary of War Hegseth, have ordered the United States military to take a very different step toward people they believe might be drug traffickers. Now, they're little groups of people in very little boats in the Caribbean Sea. Whatever these people have done cannot and could not amount to the millions and millions of dollars worth of cocaine that Mr. Hernandez and his brother were convicted of bringing into the United States. They are in the Caribbean, that is far away from the United States. There is no evidence they ever came to the United States or that they were involved. In fact, let me stop. I'm not going to bring up all the evidence that isn't there because there was no evidence. There was no need for evidence, not for Mr. Trump, whoever told him, since he didn't go down and look himself, and whoever told Hegseth, who didn't go down there and look himself. They believed whoever the source of the information was, and they never gave, how many people? 84 is the final count I have. 84 people whose nationality we don't even know. We know nothing about them except that they are dead. They were killed in their boats by the United States military, ordered to do so by Trump and Hegseth. There was no evidence that was presented to these people. They had no lawyer. There was no trial. They had no jury. They had no judge. The president and the secretary of war that he appoints were the judge, the jury, the lawyer, and the executioner, all in one, all in a moment's decision. That's not legal, friends. It doesn't matter where it is, whether it's on the high seas or whatever the low seas might be, international waters or national waters. You know how I know it's illegal? Because in the United States, drug trafficking is not a capital crime. We don't punish people by killing them, not for drug traffic. In many parts of the United States, we don't kill people no matter what they're found guilty of. In some states, the great state of Texas, we kill a lot of people, but not for drug traffic, usually for what are considered to be more serious crimes. Why are we killing? We don't need to. I asked a friend of mine, a retired naval officer, I believe that's the part of the military he served in, I'm not 100% sure. I asked him if he knew anything about this. Oh, he said, sure. It's common practice. If the United States Navy somewhere suspects that there is drug traffic, they in a boat, they approach the boat, they explain who they are and what they're doing. They request permission to come aboard the other ship. They inspect it. If there are drugs, they confiscate them and they arrest the people there so that there can be a trial to determine who is guilty of what, who isn't. None of that was done. Now, I know most of you understand, but I'm going to say it anyway. This is all probably just a preliminary, an overture, as you might have before a symphony or an opera. It's the overture to whatever Mr. Trump is about to do in Venezuela. The boats were near Venezuela, their crime. They may have come from Venezuela, we'll never know. They may have been Venezuelans, we'll never know, because we murdered them. And I say we because this is our country and that's our military that did what I'm describing, as you know, if you've been reading the newspapers, watching TV, or are even minimally informed. Nothing I have said in this program is private or special information. Everything is taken from public sources of information as confirmed by Secretary Hegseth. He doesn't deny he gave the order. He denies only that when it was determined that 2 or 3 survivors were clinging to the wreckage of a boat that the military had hit with a missile, he denies giving the order, which the press has said he did, but he denies saying, quote, kill them all. By the way, they were killed. Someone gave the order, but the people at the top, the people who tell us the buck stops here, have carefully arranged for the buck to go someplace else, as such people usually do. We are living in levels of disregard of the law that means the protection you and I assume we are afforded by a lawful society are not, in fact, available. People who can behave illegally and unlawfully abroad are more than usually perfectly capable to do the same thing at home. And watching The ICE military proves my point. This is not the rule of law. This is the rule of outlaw. In the end, and this is my final point, a declining empire usually flames out by going to war to try to recoup in war what is beyond being recouped. And so the war usually goes badly. Toward the end of the Roman Empire, they referred to all the people crowding in and taking over pieces of as savages, as wild tribes. They were none of those things. It's just that they were winning, and Rome could not understand, having been a dominant empire for some centuries, that it was over. We are now a nation that has designated China to be our great adversary, that cannot end the war in Ukraine, even though it knows it's lost, costing still more money, costing still more lives, reducing that poor country to a horrible condition. So the fact is, we face the following. Either we continue the way we've been going, which will end in a war with China and the BRICS. And there is no way for the United States to win such a war. They have nuclear weapons, probably more than we do. China and the BRICS together are over half the population of this planet. The United States is 4.5% of the people on this planet. The United States in G7 is under 20% of the population of this planet. It's over. The next after our decline will either be a Chinese empire or maybe, if we're lucky, the effort we call the League of Nations after World War I or the United Nations after World War II will be the model, a genuine multinational agreement among the people of the world so they don't replicate the history I have just tried to summarize. Those are our real choices. But I'm not pessimistic. I'm actually optimistic. I think slowly, painfully, and hesitatingly, we are building in this country to our new political initiative that will go to the people, tell the story we have to say, which I've tried to summarize with and for you this morning, and say we need a new political direction, new political leaders who will sit down with our Chinese counterparts, because they, like we, need to avoid the clash from which there is no recovery, nuclear war. And maybe if we take the initiative here, we'll find kindred souls over there who will meet us halfway. And the best argument for that strategy is that it's better than any alternative.